Welcome to NextLabs Expert Q&A series. This series was designed to inform you of relevant cybersecurity topics via expert knowledge.
In this episode, our guest Nitin Aggarwal will cover how attribute-based access control can enhance dynamic data protection. Nitin Aggarwal is an associate partner with Infosys Consulting. Now, Nitin will introduce himself before we move into the Q&A.
Hi everyone, I'm Nitin Aggarwal. I'm an associate partner with Infosys Consulting. I've been working with Infosys for over 12 years. I currently lead the enterprise security risk and compliance practice at Infosys Consulting. And I've been helping clients achieve a sustainable IT compliance and also move to new ways of managing security in an enterprise, specifically around attribute-based access controls.
Let's move into the Q&A. What has caused the shift in the need for dynamic data protection?
So dynamic data protection has been there since a long time, but in the recent past, companies have been moving or looking towards dynamic data protection more because of multiple reasons, such as, let's say, COVID. So because of COVID, the remote working became more prevalent. And when you talk about remote working, to achieve data security, you have to actually have checks on data, where data is being accessed, when it is being accessed, and how it is being accessed. These things are only possible through dynamic data protection. Or if you look at a recent case, so a lot of companies are required to put sanctions on how they do business with Russian companies or with Russian entities. So this requires a lot of change in the way they operate and change in the way the systems have to behave. And similarly, there are more and more regulations that keep coming up, like the GDPR regulation, which requires again a flexible concept of managing data security.
What are some of the current challenges that companies are facing when it comes to dynamic data protection?
So the challenges companies face for dynamic data protection today is, first of all, the applications per se, they do not offer a capability to go fine grained, which means you have limited capability in a lot of applications being used in majority of the companies to impose restrictions at the minutest level, which is kind of the need when you talk about dynamic data protection, that you just don't want to rely on the level at which the native security concepts go. You want to go to the lowest level where you want to control the data. The second challenge is the native security concepts in a lot of the applications, they do not allow you to put restrictions based on dynamic factors or dynamic attributes such as the time at which somebody is accessing, the location from where somebody is accessing. So most of the security is mostly static, and there is no way in the applications where they are able to manage it dynamically. So these are cases which are not available through the native security concepts of the applications, and these are the challenges what companies face.
How does ABAC enable dynamic protection?
So attribute-based access control works based on attributes, as the name goes. In attribute-based access control, we define policies which are actually built based on the attributes, and we can say you are allowed to view a sensitive data only when you are from, let's say, an HR department and you're trying to access within office hours, and you have some security clearance. So what happens is, every time a user tries to access a data which is sensitive or classified as sensitive, the system at that time will check whether the user belongs to HR department and the user is belonging to a specific clearance level. And based on that, at that point in time, the system will either allow the user or deny the user. Now this thing, if the attribute values change within the next hour and the user is again trying to access, the behavior may be different based on what the values are.
Which types of organization would benefit from an attribute-based access control system?
There are different types of organizations that can benefit from dynamic data security or attribute-based access control. So companies that have to comply with regulatory requirements such as export compliance, trade compliance, ITAR. There are also companies who have to comply with regulations such as GDPR, where you are supposed to apply restrictions on who can access and who can use personal sensitive data. There may also be a wider use case for organizations as part of their mergers and acquisition transactions, where Let's say you have divested a part of your entity and then you have to draw a boundary line into what a divested entity user should see vis-a-vis what a retained entity user should see. So rather than having to redesign the security or reapply the whole model, you can use attribute-based access control in such companies to do a virtual data segregation on the fly.
This concludes episode 4, how attribute-based access control can enhance dynamic data protection. To review the interview with Nitin, you can check out the article in the description. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for episode 5 where we will have more insights from a new expert.